Law is something that we face every day personally, somewhere on something, You may not use that word, but it is there. What is the basis of law? What is the basis of law? The will of the people or the will of God? This is a very fundamental question. What is the basis of law? Every nation has law. We Christians definitely believe God's revelation in nature and God's revelation in the Bible. They are the basis, the adequate, foundation upon which every law must be rested, whether it is pagan society or Christian society. The jurisprudence, what they call technically, the foundational principles of the law, they must be derived from the Bible or the nature. There's natural law and then there is the written law. So upon those two foundations, the law of the nature and the law of the Bible or the revelation, all human laws must be made. William Blackstone was a great, lawyer and a great professor of jurisprudence. He made this statement that upon these two foundations, the law of nature and the law of revelation, the Bible, depend all human laws. The Bible provides us guidelines for all areas where law needs to be made. The Christian concept of law consists both natural and biblical law. They originate in the character of God's righteousness and God's love. Take Indian Penal Code, IPC. There are many provisions concerning every aspect. They all go back to the Bible. The Roman jurisprudence, they call it. The Roman jurisprudence is derived from the Bible. The Roman jurisprudence solely derived from the Bible. Murder or laws governing murder or adultery or theft, anything, marriage, everything. It comes. Now, sinful man, what he has done, as man's sinfulness begin to be expressed more publicly, he begins to make this encroachment upon the jurisprudence so that he will bring more of the modernism and secularism into it. He slowly wanted to encroach upon that foundational principles and replace it by secular humanism. Secular humanism. And that's the problem with all the laws we have, Today actually who makes the law is a big question. Is the parliament and the legislative assemblies make the law, or really the Supreme Court and finally make the law? The courts are not lawmakers, they are law interpreters. They are there to interpret the law. The enforcement of the law is by the executive branch, the police and the Home Department and all that. The courts have to interpret whether this particular act comes under the provisions of the law, how it applies. But now they have gone beyond that. Laws are enacted and made by this the judiciary. Judiciary will tell, and then accordingly the legislature will make the law. But the judiciary will, their interpretations. So this is never meant to be. This is never. See, that's all because of when we have judges who are not necessarily people who believe in God, they are atheistic, and simply humanistic, secularly humanistic, that's all they could do. That's all they could do. So homosexuality is legalized. You know, there was a time where adultery was a sin in no more. Court said that two mature people, doing things privately by mutual consent cannot be an offense. Whether they married or not is not important. Well, that's almost, it's not an interpretation of the law. It is making a new law. Making a new law. That sort of thing should never be there. So everywhere you can see that all over the world that, the secular man who is a sinner, who doesn't like God or the Bible, even he doesn't like the natural laws. Lot of that one is even, abused. People do all those things. Today, animals and trees have more rights than human beings. This is true. You can kill a man with less consequences than cut a tree. You can shoot at a man with much less consequences than shooting at a deer or a wild animal. Why? What happened to our society? The legal system. The basics and the foundations of the legal system are cracking. Not accidentally, knowingly. Because they wanted to take away our society, our legal system completely from any attachment to the Bible and the Roman jurisprudence which derived from the Bible. They wanted to bring it totally secular, irreligious. That's what they want. If this trend will continue, we will be very uncomfortable in a very short time. Even now we are uncomfortable. Those who at least know the Bible, they are very uncomfortable. God established the human government. The rule of law primarily is established by God to check, man's sinful nature, acting boldly so that life will be uncomfortable, will be difficult. That's why. In theocracy, God executed the justice directly. But now, God has delegated this to man. But delegation is always with the definite restrictions and permissions, sanctions. They are called legal sanctions. I'd like you to turn to Romans chapter 13. A great passage on this. Even believers, I'm talking about evangelical Christians, they act contrary to Romans chapter 13, and some of them say that I don't believe it anymore. Let us read that chapter.
Verse 1?
From verse 1, we will read up to verse 11.
Every person is to be in subjection to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those which exist are established by God. Therefore, whoever resists authority has opposed the ordinance of God, and they who have opposed will receive condemnation upon themselves. For rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil. Do you want to have no fear of authority? Do what is good, and you will have grace from the same. For it is a minister of God to you for good. But if you do what is evil, be afraid. For it does not bear a sword for nothing, for it is a minister of God, an avenger who brings wrath on the one who practices evil. Therefore it is necessary to be in subjection not only because of wrath but also for conscience sake. For because of this, you also pay taxes, for rulers are servants of God, devoting themselves to this very thing. Render to all what is due to them, tax to whom tax is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. Owe nothing to anything except to love one another, for he loves his neighbor has fulfilled the law. For this, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet. And if there is any other commandment, it is summed up in the same. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to a neighbor, therefore love is the fulfillment of law. Do this knowing the time, that is, it is already the hour for you to awaken up from sleep. For now salvation is nearer to us than when we believe.
Let's turn again to 1 Peter chapter 2. 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 13 and 13 and 14. First Peter chapter 2 verse 13 and 14.
Submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether to a king as the one in authority, or to governors as sent by him for the punishment of evildoers and the praise of those who do right.
Right. So Romans chapter 13 is very basic passage. It talks about the human government. Human government at all levels. Starts with a very strong statement, let every soul be subject unto the higher powers. That every soul. I mean, nobody is exempted from submitting to the higher authority. Whatever is higher authority. Whether it is husband or wife, parents over children, teachers over students, government over the people, whatever it may be. Submission to the authority is mandatory. That's the biblical law. That's the law. So anybody who disobey, for the reason is also given. What is the reason? For there is no power but of God. If anybody is holding legally power, he got that power from God. If I as a father has power over my children, it is not a power that I have, taken it over by myself. It is given to me by God. So if my children do not obey me, they are all grown up, therefore the instruction, children obey your parents, does not apply to them. Now it is honor your parents. That's what applies to them. But there was a time they were under my protection, and they were my wards, and they were supposed to obey. Absolutely. I have to be gracious knowing their children. I have to be loving and all that. But from their part, what was expected is obey. And I must be conscious of the fact that the authority that I have is from God, so I should not misuse it, abuse it. So this is a very clear commandment. There is no power but of God. Then said, the powers that be are ordained of God. This is an ordinance of God. This is an ordinance. That's where we may say that is delegated by God. Is delegated. The authority absolutely rests in God, but that absolute power for its exercise is delegated to parents, to husbands, to teachers, to government, and all these people, the elders and all those things. So anybody who is challenging the authority that God has ordained, they are challenging God. So this delegation is a big principle. It's good to study about it. I don't have authority in myself. God has the authority. But God has delegated that authority to me to exercise it over my children. Because I happen to be father. That's my privilege or my responsibility. And I have to be conscious of it, the nature. This is not authority that I possess in myself so that I could do anything I want. No. I am limited. Because it's delegated, he who delegated told me the extent of the authority, the purpose of the authority, the manner of execution of the authority, everything is stated. I cannot break any one of them. But those who are under authority, when they challenge authority, disobey authority, they are disobeying God. Two sins they are committing. They are disobeying God, and also they are disobeying the authority whom God has appointed. Some of the moral areas, when you disobey, you are only disobeying God. You are not disobeying anybody else. But here you are disobeying both. So it's so important, So a parents ought to know that they are exercising God's authority over the children. Children need to know that my parents are exercising God's authority over me. Elders need to recognize that, we are here to exercise God's authority over God's people. God's people need to recognize that these men are, ordained by God, they are delegated by God to exercise authority in my life. Wives need to recognize that the husbands are ordained by God to exercise authority over wife. And husbands ought to be very careful that I am exercising God's authority, so I am not my own authority. So I can exercise it only within the framework God has ordained. Otherwise it will be abuse of authority. Governments have to recognize that. So this is a whole big thing, God could do it himself, but God has made this arrangement. Delegation of authority. So we need to teach really in our churches and our family about authority. So when a person is disobeying the command, the legal command of a policeman, it's a violation against the authority of God, the arrangement of God. It's not very simple, You may not like it. The only time you can disobey is when he is not doing it as per the authority delegated. That's where you say, you have no authority to tell me in this matter. But God has not delegated that to you. You cannot tell me whether I should cook chapati or rice for breakfast. That's not something God has delegated to the policeman. Even if the government will make a rule like that, we won't obey that rule because they don't have the right to make a rule on that. So delegated people, they are very responsible to God. So delegation means the one to whom it is delegated, he does not have authority in himself. This is a key principle. I don't have authority over my children in myself. It is God's authority that I am exercising. So I have to be very careful in exercising God's authority, because if I go beyond, then I am misusing God's authority. God has not given me. So I just cannot spank the children until I please. I am satisfied. The authority is not given there for that. I can spank because God has given me the authority. So the Bible gives guidelines how children ought to be spanked, how children ought to be corrected, how children ought to be taught, and all those things. I just cannot do what they want. The government has now banned using, sticks or corporal punishment is completely taken out, but the government is not given that authority. It's the parents' authority. Government is encroaching upon it. So what Christians will do? They still will exercise their God-given authority, and if the government wants to punish, government will punish. Because that's a principle. You don't question government's authority to punish you. but you don't obey those kinds of laws where the government does not have. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, they refused to bow down to the idols, but they did not fight against casting them into the fire. They cooperated. Okay, you do. But concerning the other one, God has not given you the right to decide whom should I worship. Therefore, your order will not be respected. But you have decided that anyone who disobey your order, you will cast them to fire. Go ahead, do it. I'm not going to resist that, but I'm going to resist this. So we need to know the nature of the delegated authorities and the extent of it. So here Paul is giving us some light in verse 2, says, whoever therefore resists the power, resists the ordinance of God. Anytime we are resisting an authority, even that authority is duly functioning, what are we doing? We are resisting the ordinance of God. And think of that. We resist the ordinance of God. How could we do that? We couldn't do that. We couldn't do. Now the BJP government has come. BJP government is brought to authority by whom? God. God. God has given the authority to them to rule in India. But the BJP government is not given authority in the areas of our spiritual matters, our relationship with God. If they go, they encroach upon that area and make rules saying that, no one should worship God on Sunday or no one should read Bible, then Christians will resist that. Because it is what they call, it is a law they made in an area where they had no authority. That authority was not delegated. But if anybody who reads the Bible will be put in jail, you cooperate. They want to handcuff, yes sir, go ahead, do it. That you are not going to resist. But the other one, I will read Bible. I will read Bible. Punishment, that you decide. I have not done anything wrong. It's an abuse of authority, that God will deal with you. That God will deal with. Our God is able to deal with that. That's where when God will change governments, and all that. Yes. So we should never be resisting the authorities established by God. Never. Whoever therefore resisteth the power, resist the ordinance of God. Says, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. That's a clear statement that you do it, you're going to be punished by God. God may ask even that very authority, you have disobeyed to punish you. God said, put him in jail for 5 years. Sometimes they hang him. The authority of God is exercised today through governments, through other people, other parties whom He has delegated. We should never be involved in disobeying duly appointed, authorities. We should respect them. We should teach our children the importance of this truth. Especially in Kerala, that. I don't know, in Mumbai, Kerala, the SFI and a few political student movements, they all encourage children to disobey government, throw stones to buses, challenge the police, attack the police station. It's a challenge. They are challenging God-appointed authorities. They are interfering. They are establishing a parallel government. And God has not allowed them. God does not have that sort of an arrangement. So we should tell our children that never get involved in any of those things, because you are going to be punished then by God. You are resisting God's ordinance. Those who resist shall receive to themselves damnation. That's very strong and clear statement. Look at verse 3. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Why God has delegated authority like this? The evil workers must be punished. The good workers must be protected. As long as you have not violated any law and you are doing good, you don't need to be afraid of the police. You don't need to be. You haven't violated anything. It's the thief who will run when he sees the police. We don't need to run away from the police. Of course, our police may stop us even though we haven't done anything to squeeze out some money from us. That's the abuse of the authority. So the rulers are not a terror to do good works. This is where one of the measures or one of the checkpoints to know where this particular administration is good or not. When a government becomes a terror to those who are practicing good, that government ceases to be operating according to the mandate of God. The police and the government must be a terror to those who practice evil, to the murderers and the adulterers and the thieves and the robbers and all those things. They must be a terror, they must be a terror. But when they become a terror to people who live righteously, soberly, obeying the laws of the land, innocent people are picked up, put in jail, they are beaten. Then that government ceased to be operating within the framework of God. Then you know that very soon that government will be removed by God. Either in the next election or God uses other ways. The rulers are never to be a terror to those who do good. Yes, they should be helping those doers of good. But now government sometimes is a terror, What the Christians are doing? They are not doing anything, anything illegal, unethical. They are quietly helping only people. But when the government become a terror only because you are a Christian, if the same thing you doing is done by somebody else, is a Sikh or a Parsi or a Hindu or Muslim, it's not wrong, but you do it, then it is wrong. Anybody can use the river for going and dipping and themselves and doing this puja, but if a Christian goes to have baptism, then it is all sorts of problems. All sorts of problems. Yes. If Christians meet in a home and pray, they can bring in all kinds of laws. But other prayer meetings and other religious activities going on, nothing. So when the government become a terror to those who practice good things, that government is violating, is abusing delegated power. Christians then and there can pray, God, this government has gone too far. The abuse of the law has come and you have to, change it, or in God's ways you have to react, you have to interfere. So says the rulers are a terror to those who practice evil. Now that's another thing, an indication. Those who practice evil, are they terrorized by the government? Or are they helped by the government? The land mafias who grab all the government land. And all those people, they are comfortably carrying on their business. But somebody who wants to, do something good and legally right, they are given all kinds of troubles. So there is the abuse, because man is a sinner. This sort of abuse is going on. And we should never be afraid to raise our voice in a legal forum, about these abuses. Citizens forum, you could call it.